Well, I mean, we don't have an application in front of us to approve or deny, as I understand it, right?
Correct.
Okay, so what do you want to
We sent you a letter.
send? Which letter? I got a
The
lot of
one that I
letters.
sent to you. I copied you on some other correspondence, but you sent me a letter.
That was
and I
March
re-
12th.
I replied.
Right. And I guess I don't understand what's not clear that, where we're at now, which is that I've had discussions with the building inspector and the fire department, and they're both wanting to have updated plans on what's going on.
So in my letter, I request that you table all action on Northeast Fire Diesel until we have our final building permit for the
Absolutely.
At which
We
point-
are taking it.
At which point, all of the, the issues that are outstanding will be answered. All of our team members will all be on the same page. We've been trying, you've been asking a lot of questions, we've been trying to fill you in on our thinking process, but I don't think that process is working. I think you want to wait till we have final decisions.
Yes,
In
absolutely.
April, when we have our, the end of April, when we have our final building permit filed and everything's settled.
Yes.
I think the more conversation we have as that goes along, the worse things
Probably.
get.
Now, I think, yeah, I think that's absolutely true. I think one thing that we should definitely make clear is that in our opinion, my opinion, is that you do not need a flammable storage permit until the point that you are filling the tanks. That is from our perspective, empty tanks are empty tanks. There's nothing flammable in an empty tank. Okay, so we never felt a need that you have to have this permit in hand for, really, from the very beginning, that's been one of the confusing things for me and everybody else on this board, which is, that's usually the last thing that happens in a project.
So I was told different from Ed Jarvis.
That,
So I'm just saying,
I
that we're going under his counsel.
that is exactly what I heard from Ed Jarvis too.
Okay.
But what I haven't heard is why. And it's not from him, because he doesn't need it. He doesn't need the flammable storage license. He tells me that's needed to go to the state fire marshal, which I have tried to, I've tried to confirm that, but I haven't been able to confirm that. But from my perspective, there's nothing out of compliance with you having tanks sitting down there, as long as they're empty. Okay, so just so you understand, because I saw that in your letter, that you're
Yes.
saying why,
That, I
why.
mean, that's why we've been here every year. We've spent so many hours going through this process year after year because the fire department told us that's what we needed to do.
Up
So-
until you fill them, you don't need a permit from us. So that's part of this, just so you know, that's I guess how we interpret the way the law is, that there's no flammable storage materials there, and you can't put them there until a lot of other things need to happen, and we understand that. So we haven't been the ones pushing to get that license for that reason. And at the very beginning, let me just say that at the very beginning, when in 2011, when Mr. Union was the representative, we would ask him the same questions, and he didn't give us, and we would say, why are you coming to us now? And he said, well, we need it, we need it, we need it. And we said, well, why do you need it? And he just didn't.
Because the fire department told us, we can ask them why, but they're still telling us to come here, so.
That might come from the state fire marshal, doesn't want to review plans, approved plans for a site that doesn't have a license to put the storage on it. They feel like they'll be wasting their time reviewing all these plans for this facility, and they give us the approval, and the license board doesn't give us a license for storage. They've done, which comes first, I guess.
But I've gone back and
Or just the opposite.
my question
That's what
is
you're saying.
why,
That's where the fire department's.
what if he makes a change? What if the fire marshal makes a change?
To what?
To whatever. I mean, so in other words, we issue a license, and the fire department hypothetically comes back and says, this needs to change, these quantities needs to change. Well, now you have to come back to us and get another license.
Most of the time,
So-
you get a license for the site
So-
on X amount of gallons. It doesn't really matter what's in one tank.
So I'll admit to being very confused over that, and I absolutely heard the same things coming from Ed Jarvis, so I understand that. But our perspective is, you don't need it till you're ready to need it, okay? If you need it to get to then you need it, but the fire department is also gonna need their plans. So at this point, I assume you're developing the whole system,
Should be done by the end of April.
that's all.
We have I think we have final sign off on our design from Greenfields and from our Bob Seppiangton, MP, our engineering firm. As of this morning, I think we've kind of figured out kind of the end of the story on most of the issues. And then we're working with an architect to finish the balance of plant, all the construction documents.
Okay.
And MP is going to do the balance of plant. So we should have that by the end of April.
And you saw what the building inspector is looking for. I think,
Yeah, all of those are just traditionally included in that final building.
so at this point, what are you going to do with compounds? I mean, what are you going to run with? Are you
Storage?
No, of chemicals. And the reason I say is that I did see, you sent late this morning, or received later when Lori came in, the message from the guy at Greenfields.
In the UK.
In the UK, yeah, and I certainly understand that, and you know, talking about the differences between potassium methylate and sodium methylate, but you have to be aware that the last license we have on hand has sodium methylate on it. So I assume you're coming to a closure on that decision soon.
We've had that decision for a while, and we've communicated that potassium methylate is the compound that we're going to be using.
But the application dated February 28th has sodium methylate on it.
Probably was carried over from the old one.
That's what I'm telling you.
There was a follow-up the day after, and Kathy, sorry about that.
Tom had just made an error when he clarified that the next day.
Right there.
Right, he clarified the next day.
Okay, because the previous one in November had sodium ore, and then it changed again. Okay, so that's, can you understand why we're getting confused?
Well,
Because things are changing.
they're
and that's-
both the same class.
Yes,
And it depends on the chemical composition.
but the
part
volume,
and stuff.
but the volume changes a lot, and the environmental storage conditions change for the two. That's the difference.
So when we finish our final building permit, our final plans will be there.
Okay.
And you won't be involved in the discussion of, shall we do this, shall we do that, and the more information that we're gathering.
Right, that's
you know,
fine.
the closer we're getting into, really finalizing what we want to do.
You guys had asked for what's going on, so we've been feeding you the changes that go on, but they're just discussion type changes, going back, trying to figure out the best process, instead of waiting to the end when we finally make decisions. That's what's been the confusion.
And
We're
it's-
trying to keep you updated, but probably make it more confusing, trying to update our process of trying to figure out the best way to go, based on recommendations from Greenfield, recommendations on different suppliers, so.
It seems to
That's
me the
reason why.
confusion is about the role of what your role is and when you come into the process.
Right, absolutely.
We're having advisors who tell us that you have a certain role. The fire department, MPE, they say this is how you deal with the license board. And then you guys are saying we have a different role. And so, we're not, so it's been confusing.
Yes.
And I think you didn't want to be a part of these,
Well,
what you'd call changes, but they're just,
nobody's ever brought forth a project like this. I mean, there aren't any operating in the area. There aren't any. So there really isn't a lot of guidance and a lot of guidelines. I think the bigger problem was that in general, I rely on the building inspectors and the fire departments to do their jobs and to communicate that with us, and we kind of all make do things together. And what happened in this case was the building inspector, because I went and I met with him, and he lays out a two-page thing that says shell of a building.
Yeah.
And he says, I don't see anything about a biodiesel plant here. Of course, he knew what was going there, and he's going, I can't say anything other than what the application is in front of me. So that's a huge problem.
So you asked us to meet with the building inspector and the fire department in January. We did. We had a huge
And then,
tech review of everything that we're planning, everything we're thinking, and they both agreed to sign off on our license. They said that all of these conversations shouldn't hold up your license.
well, I met with the building inspector after that date, and he said something different to me.
He wanted to see a
You know,
final set of plans, like we.
He wants to see it settled. He said, I want to see a final. I said, what do you have? And then it became obvious that there was different information being that the fire department had and than the building inspector had.
So he
That's-
copied
that's-
everybody on everything.
I mean, I saw, he rolled out what he had, and it was,
But he'd also been copied on the new application that came to you.
but he didn't
and that went to
have
them.
construction plans for anything. I'm telling you, what I saw in his office was the shell.
Yes.
I mean, there's a little more than that, the shell, a little bit of electrical, et cetera, et cetera.
Listen,
So,
as far as I'm concerned, right at the very beginning, you brought in a complete set of plans. This is a complex situation. It's been fed to us piecemeal. It should have come in with the plans, stamped and signed by a registered professional engineer.
First, the building.
Maybe 3 or 4 stamps depending on the process, fire protection, structural, etc. Instead of that, we haven't had that. If we'd had that, then we could have taken it apart and each individual could have worked on it. As it is now, Mark Snow's got a little bit of it, we got a little bit, the fire department's got a little bit. And if it had been a complete set of plans when you came in the first time, we wouldn't be sitting here today.
And that would have been a better way to do it. We didn't have the money to
It's
do
really
it.
the only way to do it.
But we didn't have the money to do it that way. And so that's why we've come in 3 stages.
Yeah. Well, I just feel frustrated because, I don't have any problems with what you want to do up there. It's just the process that bothers me. And then every time you come in, there's something else has changed. I don't know, I can't even keep up with it.
So you agree that we should wait until April
Yes.
when we have our final plans?
absolutely.
Yeah, I
And then you'll
would.
have the whole package with
Well-
everything, and we'll give, do you want a copy of the full building application?
It's most important, in my mind, that the building inspector and the fire chief and the fire department have everything
Yeah.
and have it the same.
Yes.
I think that's number one in my mind. In terms of what we want, I don't feel a need to have the whole thing myself, as long as I know that those two have it, and if I really need to go
We're
see it, I
really
can go
tail
see it.
end.
Yeah,
If everybody else signs off on it, I don't have any problem.
and so that's what I'm looking for, to make sure that they're good with it.
So if we submit our application to the building inspector and the fire department signs off on it, coming here to get the license is kind of pro forma at that point.
It generally is, but it needs to be, a complete system. And, I take your word that you can develop that, but that's all I can do. But I understand, it's a complex project. I've done a lot of reading and a lot of research on these, and I mean, the number one thing that causes the problems at these plants is leaks. And the number one leak that I see is pump seals. So it needs to make sure that that's what you're looking for, is to have correct response and detection of that as the big thing that we see, that I've seen in my research is what causes accidents. And that's presumably what the fire and building are going to look at. And that's why I was so concerned about the ventilation. I mean, if you have a leak,
Well, there will be ventilation system for the building, and you have normal ventilation for the tanks, but the building itself will have a mechanical
Right.
ventilation system.
right,
And it'll be designed per code.
per code, and and I asked the building inspector, I said, do you have anything? I don't have anything.
We had done that design, we just try and get the building up.
Gotcha. So there's a whole, I mean, I don't know that I've said it in front of you, but my impression of this project is you got 90% of it done, and now you have to do the next 90%. I'm sorry, that's just the way I look at this project. And then I understand that there's a heck of a lot. I've been involved in major construction projects. I understand that there's a lot behind this, and I was very concerned that I didn't see it. You know, Sandry comes in and does a small fuel depot on Chapman Street, and we get a set of plans like this, and an engineer, and flow calculations, and specs on every valve pump, and I got, you know, this project started out on an 8.5 and 11 piece of paper, wanting a fuel permit.
Well, I mean, it sounds like we just got bad information, and we shouldn't even have ever been here. And we instead have been here
Yes.
3 or 4 months a year, trying to go
I
through the
kept
process
asking this
over
question,
and over and over again.
And
So, you understand, we've been
yes,
in a catch-22.
yes.
So,
But
it's been pretty frustrating all the way.
Okay, well, let's try to move forward on this and get this thing done.
I don't think pro forma is the right word, though. I mean, pro forma means that you're gonna come with it, and we're gonna necessarily rubber stamp and say goodbye, good luck, etc. I don't think that applies to this board. Doesn't matter what the request is, we're not pro forma to anything.
But, you know, we have to see that, you know, it's there. And I guess I never felt like what I expected to see was there.
Mhm.
All right, we good?
Um,
Good design.
Any other questions you had?
You had some other,
Sure.
you had some statements about his letter that you wanted to follow up on.
Oh,
At
sure.
one point, you had asked for us to do a catastrophic,
I actually do have a
analysis.
concern about that one. Yeah,
and so the National Grid
Yes.
has, he owns those
Yep.
transmission lines outside of our building. There's an easement.
Yeah, we're basically outside their easement.
Sure you are.
They build an easement to keep that air.
No, I-
I think, so we're outside that easement, and they know about the building, the process. We also had to get easement to have our driveway go underneath the power lines. They had no concerns with the plant there and the tanks and the process being along the power lines.
What does it feed?
This transmission lines, I go through England, but they don't see it as our plant being a hazard to their, or a exposure to their power lines. They would have said something. They didn't say anything when they got notice of the meetings that we had. They didn't say
No,
anything we
well, I
said.
understand where they're coming from.
Yeah.
I do.
I mean, you've got transmission lines running across roads, you could have accidents in cars, you could have, that's kind of ask for something that's not really practical or realistic. I mean, I don't see anything happening that would be catastrophic.
Well, I mean, you know, that's probably not what the people in New Albany said last month. So, yeah, that's the last biofuel plant to go up. These exploded. I'm sorry, these plants have not had the best safety records overall as an industry, and it's going to be it's a concern for me. You're about, what, 900 feet from Route 2? You're right near the Greenfield recharge area for the wells. It's a serious, it is, you know, this is not nothing. This is a serious plant.
I'm not saying it isn't, I just don't think it's, the exposure is there for the electrical transmission lines. More than 50 feet away from them.
Okay. What else did you
But
want to ask about?
what is it that you're asking us to do?
I want to know what the lines
Who is
feed.
it that you want us to hire?
I want
How do we
to
get-
know what the
How do
lines
we get
feed.
that information?
Okay.
National Grid they're a huge company. Just to get them to talk to us about the easement they have on our property took me 6 months.
I'll take those issues up with the fire department then.
Okay,
I will.
thank you.
There was a comment about ventilation, I think you talked about passive ventilation.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's mixed up between the ventilation of the tanks versus ventilation of the building. The building will have mechanical
I had
ventilation.
asked, that's what I asked, I asked about the ventilation of the building, and I was told that I received by email that it was a passive ventilation system.
I think that was,
That was just a
Okay,
miscommunication.
well, then you can understand why I kind of went,
the tanks.
What's
have
going on
normal
here?
venting, emergency venting, but the building
Right.
itself will have mechanical ventilation. All right, I don't know where that came from.
well, that, I didn't come,
Okay.
it came from information that I got.
Received, okay, all right.
I don't think there's anything else.
Anything else?
So we'll see. you
Okay.
Back in.
Hope so. Got a lot of work.
We table this meeting for next month, we're not gonna have our application for the next meeting, because we're not gonna have our building application end of April.
Right.
It's
So-
not tabled to a date.
It's not
specific.
tabled, I mean, at this point, I can see that we don't have an application in front of us to
Okay.
table, untable, consider, or do anything
Should
with.
we, can we with,
There's nothing to withdraw.
but I just don't want the fire department to be reviewing the last application that was submitted.
Then just tell Ed.
All right,
Trust me, they're not, I don't know that they're doing much on this right now, so I think they want to get the latest information before they review it. But, you know, when you turn the next application in to Lori is when we'll
The
start
application
considering it.
process is it goes to the fire department, who does
Right.
it here. So it has to be submitted by the fire department to the licensing board, so the fire department has submitted nothing at this point. I don't know you, so that's why Scott's saying to let them know you're fine.
Yep. All right,
okay, good.
good, all right. What else?